let's jump into the slideshow. So today's show is called Our Entire Society is One Big Satanic Ritual. That's a heavy-duty title for a show, but I want to qualify this and explain what I mean by this. And most people don't know what Satanism is, folks, still to this day. It's been one of the cruxes of my work because this is my background. It's where I came from, okay? I made no bones about it when I was first starting What on Earth is Happening. And, this was the issue that I looked at and debated and kind of bounced around in my own mind when I was first getting ready to go on the airwaves with just an audio version of the show that you're watching today. And back when, I got, the start in just basic internet radio broadcasting, I was just considering, am I going to tell people about my background in the dark occult? Am I going to tell people that I was involved in Satanism through the Church of Satan and other ancillary satanic organizations? Am I going to tell them what I saw behind the scenes, the kind of people that were involved, the kind of levels of power that they were entrenched in? Or am I just going to, try to teach the form of spirituality that I've been teaching here on What on Earth is Happening since the beginning and not mention that dark background? Because who knows what kind of, ideas that would put into people's heads about the kind of individual that I am. And I made the decision that, no, I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to try to shy away from my past, that I was going to openly tell people what I had been involved with, because I wanted to explain to them the transformative process in the mind and in spirituality that I went through personally as an individual, as a human being. And I think it was probably the best decision that I ever made, not to delay in telling people that, to explain to them that I had experience in the dark occult. Admittedly, low-level experience. I hear all these people saying that somehow I have stated that I was some sort of a high-up ranking member or I hear the term thrown around, high priest. The words never left my mouth. You cannot find any video or audio that I have ever spoken the term one time that I was a high-ranking official or a high-ranking member of any of the organizations I belong to, nor was I ever a high priest. I was appointed the title or rank of priest by itself. Nothing before or after it. That is the rank within the organization called the Church of Satan, which was formerly run and headed by Anton LaVey, who started it back in 1966, who was the high priest until the year of his death in 1997. Okay? He appointed me himself to the rank of priest in the year 1996 in that organization. Okay? That's the only claim that I've ever made about any rank in any organization that I've ever held. Okay, I've never said I was high up. I never said I was a high priest of any organization. But I was involved in the dark occult. I was involved in Satanism. I was involved as the rank of priest in the satanic organization called the Church of Satan. I held that rank. Okay? And I have direct experience with this religion as a priest within it. Okay, so all the people who want to say I'm making up things, and again, the other thing they say is they look up Mark Passio in the charter of the Church of Satan and it's not there. I've also told people that story in an innumerable number of times, countless times, that I did not join the Church of Satan under my legal name, which is Mark Passio. I joined the Church of Satan under an assumed name of Mark Rokar, which is spelled R-H-O-C-H-A-R, Rokar. Rokar is the name of a cat demon from the Gnostic book called the Pistis Sophia, or the Faith Wisdom, from the Gnostic tradition. And I took the name because I'm born under the sign Leo and have always sort of identified and found as a familiar the large cat, namely the lion, the tiger, etc. Rokar is a demon name from the Pistis Sophia that was a cat demon who was one of the rulers of what was known as the 12 Dungeons of Darkness, okay, which was a variation or a description of hell that Jesus accounts to Mary Magdalene in one of the books within the Pistis Sophia, or the faith wisdom of the Gnostics. Okay, so that's where that name came from. That's what I joined the Church of Satan under. If they did look up that name, I was appointed to the title of priest and given the title Reverend Mark Rokar in the Church of Satan. If anybody doesn't want to believe that or accept that, I really could care less. That's the actual truth of the matter. Okay? And my legal name is Mark Passio. So what I always tell people before I even begin explaining real Satanism to them is, if you were to look at any other world religion, like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, etc., and you were to want to know about the practices and belief systems within that world religion, more likely than not, if you didn't know much about it, you would go to one of the priests within that religion. You would want to go to get information from one of the officials that sort of oversees the way that religion is expressed to the masses of people, which is the priest class of that religion. So if you want to know what real Satanism is truly about, you would go to a person that was appointed to act as a liaison with the rest of the public, as a member of the priest class of that dark occult religion known as Satanism, which I was. That was my rank, and the whole job that I was doing was explaining the tenets and principles of the ideology called Satanism, modern Satanism. It's an ancient religion. It's been around for tens of thousands of years. But in the modern day, it has basic overarching tenets and general goals that operate in our society. And what I acted as was a sort of a mouthpiece, sort of a communications liaison for the ideology, okay? And I tried to spread it as far and wide as I possibly could, because that's how asleep I was. That's how just under the spell and under the thrall of this religion that I was when I was a member of the Church of Satan. So what I want to do here today is I want to explain, I'm going to recount a little bit and review a little bit about the general tenets and ideologies of true Satanism as a worldwide religion. And then in the next part of it, what I want to do is show people how our society is satanically structured, and the practices and worldview and beliefs and just general ways of being in the world, in our modern way of life, in our modern society, are structured after satanic ideologies and satanic principles. And anybody can disagree as much as they want, but it will never make that statement untrue. Our society is structured to follow after the tenets and worldview of the religion called Satanism, without a doubt. In some ways, it follows it pretty distinctly and unwaveringly. And then in other ways, it follows it in what I call, in the methods of what I call mini-me Satanism, which I'll explain as we go forward. It's basically giving people a lower level version of the ideology to latch onto. And in doing so, you're indoctrinating them or initiating them at a very low level into the religion that's controlled at the very highest levels by dark occultists, high-level Satanists, and high-level Luciferians. So let's jump into this topic because there's a lot to cover. And what I want to do is start with a quote that I feel perfectly expresses where our society is at, especially when it comes to Satanism. This could apply in countless ways to all kinds of areas of our society. But I think, although obviously Thomas Jefferson was just talking about this in a form of general knowledge on the part of the population. I think it could highly apply to people who think that they understand something about Satanism and know, not only do they know nothing about Satanism, but they have erroneous beliefs about it that they think are true. Okay? And they're attached to that belief system. You know, and that puts them at a severe disadvantage because not only don't they know what it is, they have false beliefs about what it is that is holding back their understanding, holding back an accurate understanding. So I'll dedicate this presentation today to Thomas Jefferson, and I'll start it with a quote from him. Thomas Jefferson said, "He who knows nothing is closer to the truth than he whose mind is filled with falsehoods and errors." And ladies and gentlemen, this is what I've called in the past on this program, negative knowledge. I refer to this as the dynamic of negative knowledge. And it doesn't mean having knowledge about something that is dark or negative. It means that you are so in the negative zone regarding knowledge that you would have to climb out of a hole just to get back to knowing nothing. Because not only don't you know anything, you believe things that are completely false about a topic and then accept that as true and think that you know something about it. And this is where most of our society is at, ladies and gentlemen, in just about everything. They think they know, and they're not only are they completely wrong, they know absolutely nothing regarding the truth. So here's the 0 point where you know absolutely nothing. Here's where you'd have a lot of knowledge, okay? But where people are at are way down here. They have to dig out of a hole just to get back to knowing nothing, to unlearn what they think they know that are completely false beliefs and complete errors regarding what they think they know. And that's where we're at in all of society, but most of all, that's where we're at in understanding the dark occult elements that are actually ruling our society. So let's jump in. I'm going to go through a brief review here, and you can find a much more in-depth discussion on this in my presentation called Demystifying the Occult Part 2, Satanism and the Dark Occult. I gave this back in February of 2016 at the Ethical Society of Philadelphia. And in it, I really broke down what the ideology of Satanism really is and its main tenets, and we're going to start with a review of some of that material. But if you want the extended version of that, where I go deep into my background and a lot of the symbolism of Satanism, you can check out that presentation. It's available in the videos section of What on Earth is Happening, or you can get a hard copy at the donation gifts area. So, Satanism is absolutely not what most people believe it is. They have a belief about it, but they do not have any direct experiential knowledge of it, nor do most people have any correct, even book knowledge or secondhand knowledge of it. They just believe what they've been told, and they believe what they've seen in Hollywood depictions and variations of Satanism. But they don't know what Satanism really is in the real world as a worldwide religion of the elite ruling class that is really ruling over all of society. This is the religion of the master class, of the ruling class. That's what it really is. Okay? And it's the methodology and psychology which allows them to keep rulership of the planet, to keep ruling over other people who are dwelling in abject ignorance. So Satanism is actually an ancient occult religion. It is a religion based on occult ideologies and occult knowledge. Satanism is an ancient occult religion comprised of diverse, interconnected networks of worldwide adherents. Now, let me just break down that sentence for a moment, okay? It's an occult religion, meaning what comprises it is hidden knowledge about how the human psyche and the laws of the universe function that they don't want people to know, because that knowledge differential maintains their power differential. It is comprised of a diverse network of people. Everybody thinks it's all just rich white men. Wrong. Incorrect. It's not just all rich white men. It is every single ostensible background of people, every single ostensible religious background, every race, every male and female sexes, even every social strata and income. It's not just the rich. It's not just men. It's young and old alike. It's men and women alike. It's white people, black people, brown people, Asian people, Native American. You name the culture, race, ostensible religion, background, gender, it does not matter. There are people involved from every single walk of life. Okay? That's a big misconception of the people in the ruling class, is that they're all just rich or they're all just white. Untrue. Absolutely untrue. And it's not just ruled from one place. There are members from every single country on the earth involved in this network, because every country has to be controlled. They have their tentacles throughout all of society. And it's interconnected networks. It's not one group. Everybody wants to go, oh, it's just the Freemasons. It's just the Rosicrucians. It's just the Jesuits. It's just the Zionists. No, wrong, incorrect. You don't know what you're talking about, if that's how you think about this. And, people don't want to hear that. They want to think their worldview is correct. They want to think that they have it figured out. They want to think that they figured it out. One group controls it all. Well, let me tell you something. If any one group controls it all, it's the high-level religious organizations that are ultimately controlling the spirituality of the masses of people, of billions of people. So it's the religious organizations that ostensibly run organized religions. The Vatican, high-level rabbis in the Jewish religion, high-level imams in the Islamic religion. You want to know who the real high-level dark occult Satanists and Luciferians are? They operate enthroned behind the scenes of ostensible world religion. That's who they are. They're not just behind the banking institution. They're behind that as well, and behind politics, which we're going to talk a lot about. But folks, let me tell you something. They operate through religion, most of all and foremost, because it's all religion. Everything that holds humanity back is religion. The very word religion means to hold back, to thwart from forward progress. And this is a religion, and it is comprised of a diverse, interconnected network of worldwide adherents. It's not just run out of one place. It's worldwide. At its ideological core. Now, listen to what I'm saying here. Really focus on the words I'm using. I structure this and choose the words very carefully and specifically. At its ideological core, the heart of this religion, this is the main principle or tenet by which it operates. This religion, Satanism, postulates that knowledge of the human psyche and knowledge of the laws of the universe should be occulted, meaning hidden, from the general population and held only by a few human beings. That's them. That's the master class or the master race that they consider themselves. It is much more accurate to perceive Satanists and dark occultists in general as ancient psychologists who hold and wield hidden information in ways which exploit those who remain ignorant of it. So I always give the analogy, imagine if a master psychologist found out that a young man around 19 years old was having an affair with his wife, with his trophy wife, who wasn't interested in him anymore, but wanted a young buck, and started having an affair with an attractive 19-year-old male. If the very, very advanced, powerful psychologist who knows everything there is to know about the mind and how it can be manipulated wanted to exact revenge on this person and try to befriend him, not even letting on that he knew about the relationship, he could try to find out where he lived, go, pretend to befriend him, and then what kind of a number could that psychologist do psychologically on that individual that he hates because of his involvement with his wife, when that individual knows nothing about the master methods of psychology that psychologist would wield upon him. So therefore, he has no protection against those mental and psychological techniques. I would suggest that he could devastate that individual if he were to get into his confidence. And that is what Satanism is, folks. It's ancient psychology wielded for the purpose of controlling the masses who know nothing about how their own psyche actually works. Through the power differential they gain by way of manipulating those who remain in ignorance of this critical hidden knowledge. So again, the knowledge differential that they have with the general population is easily convertible to a power differential in the real world. See, knowledge isn't power itself. Knowledge applied becomes power in the world. And these ancient psychologists have applied that knowledge and converted it to a power differential with others. They've become the powerful, and other people have been at their mercy and remained largely powerless in the world because they don't know what the ruling class master psychologists know. That's what Satanism is. So through the power differential they've gained through this knowledge differential, this small minority who are quote unquote in the know wish to rule the masses of humanity permanently and effectively become God on earth. That is their ultimate goal. Their ultimate goal is to put the general human population into abject bondage, into slavery, and become God on earth. Their version of ruling hell, because they would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. The quote from John Milton's Paradise Lost, which is an analogy or an allegory about this ruling class dynamic. So they see earth as a prison because natural law is in place, and they don't want it to be. They don't want to be bound by the rules of morality. They want to be able to do whatever they want, no matter who it hurts. They want to define what right and wrong is instead of having right and wrong existing as inherent qualities of nature, objectively. No, they don't want that. They want relativism, relative right and wrong, that they define, that they arbitrarily decide for themselves at their whim and at their preference. So that's their goal. They want to be God on earth. That's what this is all about. That's what this whole slavery society is about. A small group of people that wants to be God. But see, they give us that ideology, which we're going to talk about. It is important to understand that contrary to popular belief, and this is one that I continually fight people on. They don't want to hear it. They want to believe they're right. It doesn't matter what somebody from the inside has said. They've heard it. They believe it. It doesn't matter how in error they are. They're in negative knowledge about this. And I keep trying to explain it to people, and people want to call me a shill for explaining how this ideology really works. Okay? But I'm going to give you the straight shit and tell you how it really is. Contrary to popular belief, which is much easier for people to accept, the overwhelmingly vast majority of Satanists do not, quote unquote, worship an externalized deity known as Satan in the Christian tradition. Satanism is not about the veneration and worship of the Christian devil, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I don't know how many people I've said that to, and that somehow disqualifies me as being a source of accurate information, because they've talked to their pastor or their priest or congregation in their church, and Satanism's about worshiping the devil, you know? And nothing will dissuade them from that. And it's a kindergarten worldview of how things really work in the real world. It's a nursery school worldview. Forget kindergarten. It's nursery school shit. Okay? These people, if they worship anything, they worship themselves. Because they see themselves as God. God, the devil, Satan, everything. Nature. They see themselves as the creator, that they'll make everything in their likeness and image. That's how runaway their ego is. Okay? So forget the even concept of worship in this religion. It's about putting the ego on the pedestal, and the ego will become God, if we're being accurate. See, people always talk nonsense because they haven't been involved from a first-hand experiential perspective. And so they just want to talk about what they believe it is instead of what it really is from a first-hand experiential point of view. So they don't really worship Satan. Now, I'm not saying some of them don't look at it as an actual entity or a force in nature that they try to align themselves to. Some do. But let me tell you something, folks. Overwhelmingly, that is not really part of the worldview of most Satanists. Most Satanists see Satan as the ego, the self, etc. That's it. So, instead, they see Satanism as an ideological way of being in the world. And they view the ego-driven self as the quote-unquote God of their religion. That is absolutely the case and is absolutely accurate to the extent that I understand how Satanism is structured from being a priest within its ranks. So then people will always ask, well, if they don't worship Satan, and if it's all about the ego, and if it's all about the self becoming God on earth, then why do they use the trappings and symbolism of the Christian devil in the religion, and why do they call it Satanism? Why call it Satanism? Why name it after the Christian devil? So I'm going to explain that in this slide. The symbolism and trappings of the Christian devil or Satan in the Christian religion are used in modern Satanism. And let me tell you something, folks. Satanism is just the name for it in the modern day, since Christianity used the Christian devil in their iconography, okay, and in their allegories. It was not called Satanism from time immemorial. It was referred to as many other names. Most people, it was never really called a name. That's why in this religion, they don't really, at the highest levels, even refer to it as Satanism. They call it the old religion because it's so old, no one knows really when it originated. It was really been here since humanity has been on this planet. So they call it the old religion or the ancient religion. That's all. The high-ranking Satanists don't even call it Satanism themselves. The most popular name referred to the ideology of Satanism, by which the tenets are operating, which we're going to talk about next, the tenets of this religion, or the main ideological points, worldviews, and ways of thinking, okay? That's called a tenet, T-E-N-E-T, tenet, okay? We're going to go over those next. But those who adhere to the tenets of this religion at the highest levels don't call it Satanism. They call it the old religion. The old religion is the most popular name or variant of what it is called within their own ranks. They don't have a name for their cult, okay? They don't call it the Illuminati. They don't call it, high-ranking Freemasonry. They don't call it high-ranking Satanism or even Luciferianism, okay? There's no name for their cult, for their worldwide network of satanic ideology. So this is the worldwide cult that operates with actually no name to refer to it as. And truly, no one's really admitted to it. If you really want to be honest, okay, you're either born into it or you're not. All the people who are operating who are not really actual bloodline members of this worldwide ancient cult are just tools to be used for the agenda and thrown away when they're not necessary anymore. They'll throw the non-truly interconnected bloodline, the non-bloodline members who are just, rank and file members, they'll throw them under the bus at the earliest sign of any kind of trouble. Okay? So all the people who think, oh, I've made it to the big club, flashing the Illuminati eye out there at people that they think represents the Illuminati. Okay? That's not what they call themselves. It's not even an accurate representation of what they are, because it means illuminated, and these people are nothing close to illuminated. They're not spiritually illuminated at all. Oh, they're illuminated into dark knowledge, but that doesn't mean that one is truly spiritually awakened or illuminated. So I hate using the term Illuminati to refer to them. They don't use that term, and they don't call themselves anything. They don't even call themselves Satanists at higher levels. Lower levels, they use the term Satanism, but when you get up into the higher ranks and higher ranking members of these organizations, it is a cult without a name. Okay? And the ideology is just referred to as the old ways or the old religion. That's it. So they use these trappings and symbols of the Christian devil for two reasons. Two main reasons. The first main reason that they use this symbology of the Christian devil is to try to make outsiders see the real ideology of Satanism as just another quaint religious belief that is based upon traditional Christian belief systems. And it's brilliant. That's a brilliant thing. This way you don't think of it as something separate from Christianity, which is why whenever I bring up the term Satanism to people and they have absolutely no fucking idea of what it really means, the first thing they say to me is, oh, that's just another variant of Christianity. They're just taking the Christianity, inverting it, and worshiping the devil and calling that Satanism, and I don't believe in any of that bullshit, so it doesn't affect me. So who cares? It's meaningless. I don't care. That's the number one thing that I get when I say the word Satanism publicly. And when I try to explain to them it is not that, they don't want to hear it, because they've made up their mind it is what they believe it is, and they're attached to that negative knowledge, attached to an erroneous belief that they think is true. And they have absolutely no fucking idea what they're talking about at all. Not even a little bit, boys and girls. And there's no dissuading them. There's no turning them aside. They know. They're certain that they know. And they're a bunch of jackasses who have their head up their ass and don't know what they're fucking talking about even a little bit. And then when I try to explain that, and I get nuts because they're telling me that my personal experience isn't real and isn't accurate. You don't know where I've been. You don't know what I've seen. Trust me, you don't. Okay? It's like going up to somebody who's been in a war and saying, you weren't fucking there. You have no idea what it was like in that battle. They'd crack your jaw loose if you went up to their face and said something like that, and rightfully so. If they've been through an experience like that, and then you're trying to tell them that they're full of shit and they haven't been through it. You don't know what I know. You don't know what I've seen. You don't know where I've been. You don't know the people I've been in rooms with. You don't know the depth of evil I've witnessed and realize it doesn't even scratch the fucking surface. And then people want to tell me they know more about it than I do. You don't know shit. But it's brilliant. Their strategy is actually brilliant. It's genius. Because they have a lot of geniuses in their ranks. Who can see patterns. I don't usually even like to use the word. And people want to say, oh, I'm a genius. My IQ, the last time my IQ was tested, I tested at 147 IQ, which is genius level. But so what? Who cares? What does that mean? That means that you're good at identifying patterns and solving puzzles and, doing intellectual things with your mind. So what? That's not a measure of holistic intelligence. That's a measure of intellect. It shouldn't be called an intelligence quotient. It should be called an intellect quotient. But let me tell you something, folks. These people have genius intellect, genius level intellect. No doubt about it. I've seen it. I've witnessed it firsthand. And their strategy is actually very brilliant, because they've convinced people that they're just a lower level version. They're worshiping the Christian devil. So they take the symbolism of that and they apply it to their ancient religion, and then they get people thinking, oh, see, it's just an inversion of Christianity. That's all it is. And they just worship the Christian devil. And then people just put it down, never look into it again, and go, oh, that's just a bunch of nonsense bullshit that crazy people believe in, that are just as crazy as people who believe in organized Christianity. And they have no idea what it really is. So that's the first reason that they use these symbols and trappings. The second reason is to associate the actual ideology that they apply in everyday life to the adversarial dynamic within nature. They want to associate their worldview, their way of being in the world, their overarching ideology to the adversarial dynamic within nature, which is referred to in the occult world as the force of involution. We're going to talk about the two major occult forces that are at work in the universe on the show today: the force of evolution and the force of involution. Involution is the force which counteracts evolution and wants to stagnate life and consciousness. And we'll get into that in the next few slides. So they want to associate their worldview and their ideology with involution, the occult force that works against life, because this is a big death cult, as we're going to talk about. One of the other things that they refer to it as sometimes is the order of death. I have heard high-ranking Satanism referred to as the order of death. Okay? It has been called that, and of course, I have referred to it, and other researchers have called it the cult of the Black Sun. Okay, so you can call it these other things, but they're just labels. The ideology is what's ultimately important, defined by the tenets. So, involution is the force which opposes true evolution in consciousness. The word Satan itself comes from the Hebrew word shaitan, meaning adversary or opposer. Satanism is ultimately about being opposed or an adversary to the true order of natural law. Natural law is the Creator's laws governing moral consequence that this adversarial force always wants to work against and counteract. The laws of moral consequence in the universe. So therefore, they align themselves with the perfect representative force, Shaitan, from the Hebrew tradition. The opposer, the adversary, the one that counteracts true evolution and natural law. Or in other words, the involutionary or satanic force. The one who opposes God's law. Okay? It's a perfect allegorical and symbolic representation. All right? So moving forward. This is the core ideological position of the satanic religion or the old religion. So I call these the four main tenets of modern Satanism. The first is egotism. It is stated in Satanism as self-preservation is the highest law, meaning whatever you must do to get ahead, to put yourself in a better position than your fellow men and women, do it. It doesn't matter whether it's immoral, it doesn't matter whether it counteracts other people's rights or that it brings them down. You put yourself in a higher position in regard to your fellow men and women, no matter how you have to do it. Because you're God. You're king and queen above all else. Not on equality or equal footing under natural law and rights. No, you're special. You're better. You have to be number one. You have to be cutthroat in the dog-eat-dog world that you live in. So what I boil it down to is, it means that service to self is life's highest goal. Forget service to others, and especially forget service to truth. That's meaningless in Satanism. Satanism is all about service to self as being life's highest aspiration. And anybody who thinks that is a Satanist de facto. You know, these people we could call the de jure Satanists. They're the ones who are actually acting it out in the world, becoming members of the network hierarchy, the religious institutions that will carry out these goals. But guess what? You can be a de facto Satanist, meaning a Satanist in deed, in action, in thought. And that's what most of the world is, folks. This is what we have to understand about this whole thing. Where I'm going with this is that all of our society is a big satanic ritual, because the overwhelmingly vast proportion of our society has been ideologically converted at a low level to the ideology of Satanism. That's where we're at in the world. Most people operate at a satanic ideology in their mind and don't even know it. They're de facto Satanists without even knowing that they're subscribing to the satanic religion. I call them mini-me Satanists, after the whole character of Dr. Evil making a small clone of himself in the Austin Powers, the comedy trilogy of Austin Powers, that he called Mini-Me, which looks like him, you know, but it's a small variant of him. Well, they're making people into mini-me Satanists worldwide. They're giving them a lower level ideology of the old religion and getting them to subscribe to it on a societal scale. So the number one thing, and all you have to do is just think about the world's worldview, the worldview of most of the people of the world. Is it service to others and service to truth above all else? Or is it service to self above all else? Just think about it from that level. Are most people egotists who are only concerned with living their own lives and doing whatever they can to put themselves in a better position in life all day long, 24 hours a day, from the minute they wake up till the minute they go to bed at night? Is that the majority of the worldview of the people of this world? You better damn well believe it is. If you're being honest with yourself, you better damn well believe that. Accept that, because that's true. That's what's going on. You know? So that's all we have to do, is look at society and be honest about what we see. Is most of society egotistical? Are they in the satanic ideology of egotism? Only worrying about themselves and caring about themselves? Stop lying to yourself if you're saying that's not the case, because it 100% absolutely is. And we're talking about a good 95 to 98% of this species. And I'm being generous. So that's the number one tenet that Satanism as a religion teaches. Service to self is life's highest goal and aspiration. Take care of you and your own, and don't worry about what's happening with other people. That's what's gotten us into this mess. That's why we remain enslaved, is because people don't care about what's going on with the rights of all people. Got in a conversation with somebody this week and told them that the real money of the ruling elite, the Satanists and dark occultists that run the world, is the trafficking of children. You think people go, oh, their real money is gold. They don't use the fiat currency system. You know, their real money is precious metal, and their ultimate real money is gold. Bullshit. Bullshit. Their real money is children, is small children that they enact horrific acts of torture and pedophilia upon. That's their real core aspect of their religion, and that's their real monetary system. And people think they know what's going on in this world. They know how the elite operate. They know how the masters of the world operate. And their money is gold. Their money is children. That's their monetary system. The second tenet of modern Satanism as a ideology. And again, this is the compressed version of their ideology. This is what has it has come down through the centuries. And these have become the main four crystallized tenets at work in this worldview, in this ideology. The second is moral relativism. This is the concept that right and wrong are whatever human beings say they are. If we're really boiling what moral relativism is down to its core aspect. Right and wrong, humans get to make that up. Those are human constructs. They don't exist in nature. That's not part of the laws of the universe. Those are constructs that man gets to make up. And you know how many jackasses out there still believe that shit? Tons and tons of fucking jackasses right in the freedom movement believe that shit. They're moral relativists. They believe right and wrong come from man, and they're damn certain of it. And they're all too proud to tell you. Right and wrong are human constructs. Humans make that shit up. We just apply that. Doesn't exist in nature. There's no such thing as natural law. And they think they're going to be free. Wow. You're a sorry sack of shit if that's what you think. I have to just say it honestly and openly in street language to people. And guess what? I'll say it right to your face. You're a dumb, sorry sack of shit if that's what you think. If that's what you believe. You know what you really are? You're a Satanist. You're a Satanist. You're a Satanist if that's how you think. Indeed. In thought, in action. A de facto Satanist who doesn't even know that they are espousing satanic ideology from the satanic religion. And guess what? That's the majority of the anarchist movement, who believe erroneously that they can be a moral relativist and ever be free. If you think that rights come from human beings, then you by definition must also believe by definition that human beings can change the definition of right and wrong whenever they see fit to, at their preference or at their whim. By definition. That was one of my slides in one of my past presentations when I talked about moral relativism. And I put a big Baphomet symbol behind it because that is the core ideology of Satanism. Human beings make up what right and wrong are. Therefore, if we decide we want to change what rights are, we can change them at any given time. We want to turn a right into a wrong. That's perfectly our right to do that. We want to turn a wrong into a right. We can do it whenever we feel like it. Because guess what? We made them up. Right and wrong are things we made up. And guess what, folks? It's not just them. It's their mini-me minions out there in the truth movement, in the freedom movement, in the anarchist movement. And you're sorry sacks of dumbass shit. And come and see me and I'll tell you that right to your face. Based on you thinking that man makes up rights. Because you're such an atheist smacked ass that you're so opposed to the idea that there is a force more powerful than you that puts law into effect in creation, that you want to associate true spirituality and the true laws of the universe with bullshit religion. In your little tiny pea-brain mind where you can't see a higher power and a higher force as having nothing to do with world religion. Because that's also a bunch of sack of shit ideology, just as much as moral relativism is. But your mind isn't advanced enough. Your psychology isn't advanced enough to think outside of that two-dimensional thinking, out of that dialectical thinking. Because you don't have the trivium in hand. You don't have true truth discovery methodology in hand and in mind. Your mind isn't sophisticated enough for that. And maybe your intellect quotient is just in the shitter in addition to that. Maybe it's just you just don't have the intellectual acumen to process that and come to an accurate understanding. Doesn't matter how much you know about anything else. If you don't understand that rights don't come from man and we can't change what right and wrong are because it's based on whether behavior causes harm or not, you have no actual intelligence. And I'm not the person who's going to sugarcoat it and go, well, maybe you should reevaluate. No, I'm going to tell you you're a dumb sack of shit to your face. I'm tired and done with it. I'm done with it. In case people can't see this from the past few episodes, folks, I'm at my wit's end. I'm at my absolute snapping point when it comes to any tolerance or any kind of giving leeway and making any kind of excuses for people who think like this. Because there are no excuses for them. They're a sorry excuse. But that's what moral relativism, that's the second main tenet of the satanic ideology, that right and wrong are just man-made constructs, and we could change them whenever we feel like. This, of course, an out-of-control ego believing that they get to make up what right and wrong are, inevitably leads to tenets 3 and 4. Tenets 1 and 2 are the basis. Tenets 3 and 4 are the social expressions of the ideological foundations of egotism and moral relativism. You put those in place and they harden and crystallize in the individual ego, and you invariably lead to the societal outcomes in tenet 3 and tenet 4, which is social Darwinism and eugenics. Tenet number 3 in Satanism is social Darwinism. And this basically postulates the most dominant and cruel human beings should become the masters of humanity and rule over the masses of humanity. That's what social Darwinism essentially postulates. Your mindset and your genetics got you there, therefore you should become the master race and rule over the rest of the unwashed hordes. That's called social Darwinism. It's applying vicious animal behavior and taking it and extruding it through the human domain. It's a smacked-ass ideology even in the animal kingdom, because Darwin was incorrect and his theory of macrobiological evolution is wrong, not borne out in the science, not borne out in the fossil record, and people still religiously cling to that as a religion, when in fact it has never been proven to be the case and never will. And those same people won't look at human intervention theory, or as I call it, human interference theory, because that's too horrifying to contemplate. That's what it really comes down to. You want to know what it really comes down to? It's not that there's no evidence to support it. There's tons of evidence to support it. What it comes down to when it comes to that, folks, as a brief aside, is the mindset of the people is just too weak to take it in. That's all it really comes down to. They're not hardened enough as true men and true women to acknowledge the horror of the real human situation. Because this is a fucking zoo run by a type 2 civilization. You want to know what Earth really is? It's a hell, a prison, a zoo run by a type 2 civilization that is unseen. That's the real horror that we're in. If the truth be told. If we're being honest with ourselves. But you know how many men and women can tolerate that in this actual psyche and bear to look at the plain, vicious, naked truth of that? A piss poor pittance. A piss poor pittance. That's how many. So going back to these tenets, social Darwinism is that the most cruel can just rule the roost because, hey, they scratched and clawed their way to get there, and animals do that, and so we should emulate animals because we're just another animal. That's what that theory postulates. That's what's that tenet postulates. And then once you have those 3 in place, it's a hop, skip, and a jump, or I should say it's just very steep descent down the chute to eugenics. And I have it listed here as eugenics and epi-eugenics. And note, people, please note, folks, this is not epigenetics. This is epi-eugenics. Okay? It's classical eugenics, which means the masters should determine who is allowed to live and breed and who must die. population control and reduction, gene pool control. Eugenics is the direct means through violence, through chemical means, etc. And epigenetic is population control, genetic control through mind control. It is mind controlling the existing population to get them to cull themselves and cull characteristics out of their own gene pool through mind control and mind controlled selective breeding. I've done an entire presentation on it called The Unholy Feminine because it works through the female members of our society who largely control which male members of society will be allowed to propagate their genes and which will not. So the Satanists target the females of our society because they know that's how gene propagation works in any given society, through the females. So that presentation is subtitled, it's called The Unholy Feminine, and the subtitle is Neo-Feminism and the Satanic Epi-Eugenics Agenda. One of the presentations I'm actually most proud of. And also, it's one that, let me tell you something, folks. You know who comments on and compliments me more on that presentation than any other class of people? Women. I have received more positive comments on that presentation from women than men who've ever mentioned it to me. From women who really want to understand how the social engineers have specifically targeted them. And I have been thanked and given positive feedback and comments on that presentation by many, many, many more women than men have ever mentioned it to me. Because again, it's who wants to confront the horror. It's very similar to people not wanting to understand cosmic abandonment, because they don't want to understand the horror contained within that truth. The same thing when it comes to the mind control over women in our society. If you really understand how tight it is, it's a horror. I mean, I go to freedom-oriented meetings of concerned citizen groups in this city, and men will say to me, why aren't there ever any women here? The 2 or 3 women that ever show up at any of these meetings are personal friends of mine. That's it. That's it. Because I promote it and try to bring them out and alert them to when the meetings come up. But hardly any women ever come out to any freedom-oriented groups. Why is that? Women don't want to be free? And the answer is largely, no, they don't. That's the sad part of the society, the sad fact of the matter of the society that we live in now. And when men ask me, I'm very, very harsh, and I say right to them, I say right to their face, the reason there aren't most women here isn't because, oh, it's just they don't like the type of men that show up at these things, or because they don't, understand what we're talking about. It's because most women have been brainwashed and mind controlled into not wanting freedom. Most. Not a blanket statement. When it's a blanket statement, I'll say it. But the majority, 100%, absolutely, the majority have been conditioned into that state of mind control. And when I say that, guys there don't want to hear it. They're like, that's a sexist statement. No, it isn't. That's the truth of what's going on in social engineering in our world that you don't want to confront. You don't want to understand that the think tanks who are mind control masters have set society up like that. And that's why there's no women at your damn meetings. That's epi-eugenics. You know, that's controlling the gene pool by mind controlling the population into controlling the gene pool, because you don't have enough people to do it directly. Doesn't matter how much poison you put in the air, the water, the food, the medicine, etc. So some are going to slip through your fingers, and you're not going to get the exact results that you want, because that's a crapshoot when you do it chemically too. You want to do that, you have to do it through mind-controlled selective breeding, and that's where epi-eugenics comes in. And you also have the option of classical eugenics, which is directly wiping out populations through war and other means. Folks, these are the 4 main tenets of Satanism, regardless of what anyone will tell you. That's the crystallized, coalesced, and very much compacted tenets of the modern satanic religion. And again, I want to make very clear here, we are talking about this as Satanism in the modern day, because it wasn't called Satanism. It really never was really called Satanism until the modern day. Okay, this ideology was coalesced and compressed into the satanic ideology and called that when Anton LaVey wrote the Satanic Bible. He was charged to do this. He was a friend of the Bush family, or many people feel that they were the serfs of Germany, connected with the Guelphs, connected with the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, the Windsors of England, etc. But LaVey was asked to put out to the public, to the masses, the coalesced version of the satanic ideology in the Satanic Bible. And I am crystallizing these tenets and compacting them for people's understanding, not only from the modern writings of Satanism from both Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan, and also from Michael Aquino and the Temple of Set, the writings he has put forward, and other satanic organizations. But I am compacting this and crystallizing it from my personal experience in the dark occult myself, from an experiential point of view. So let's move on to the next slide. I'm going to build out a chart here to show you how, well, actually what I want to do here is show you the two forces of nature. The only two real forces of nature that are at work in the universe. Now, of course, some people have called these love and fear because that's ultimately the dynamics in consciousness that they are based upon. Consciousness is everything. Pure energy, pure consciousness. It's the root of everything. Pure vibration. Okay? It is that which is being, having an experience that you can't put any kind of a label on. And then it takes its innumerable myriad forms when vibration is added to it, and it comes into the illusion of matter through vibration, through vibratory energy. And many people have called these forces love and fear. But in the occult circles, they are referred to as evolution and involution. In the scientific world, and all occultism is hidden science, folks. It's not a belief system at its core level. Occultism is not really a religion. When it's perverted and turned toward the satanic, yes, it's a religion because then it holds us back. But what true occultism is, from the positive point of view, is it's hidden knowledge about the laws of the universe and the human psyche and how they operate. So they are sciences. The occult knowledge comprises a science. That's why when I'm putting forward this new documentary, I am calling it Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law. So it is, the very beginning is somewhat about me. I have to explain a little bit about my background to people who know nothing about me and what I do. So that's why the first part of it is called Mark Passio, because it's a very, very brief bio of myself at the beginning of the documentary. And then we go into the science of natural law and how adherence to it or opposition to it determines our experience as an entire human society. And this is what part of the satanic ritual of our entire society is. Getting people to not understand natural law so that they're wandering blind, never really knowing what's right and what's wrong, truly, from a true knowledge point of view. And when you don't know that, you can't align your behavior to it effectively, correctly. And then you have a society that's just in abject chaos and going down the path of tyranny as a result of that ignorance. That's called the law of freedom. And it's all contained in these occult forces that are at work in our lives, in the whole universe, in the whole manifest universe. No matter where you go, these are the two main forces. These are the two ultimate forces of nature at work in all of creation. Evolution and involution. In the scientific realm, they have been referred to as syntropy and entropy. Now, most people have known or heard the word entropy, but most people have never heard the word syntropy, which is proposed as the scientific word for the opposite force of entropy. Now, some people will say in the scientific realm that there is only entropy, or there is only the dissolution of energy and matter going into more undifferentiated forms as time progresses forward. And syntropy in the scientific realm is looked at as the exportation of entropy, meaning if your room gets dirty, to clean it up, you have to take the debris and move it somewhere else. Water cleans things, it moves things away. It's a syntropic force and motion and dynamic because it is a carrying agent, and it takes things that are debris agents and it moves them from one place to another. So it exports entropy, and different forms of energy do that. You could burn it and it converts it to a different form of energy. You can clean it with water, get the debris moving, etc. So entropy is like a default decaying condition that if you don't apply will to something, it degrades and decays over time. And this is why evolution is the ordering force. Syntropy is the ordering force. Entropy is the dissolving force, the chaotic force. Okay, so let's look at each one of these occult forces in turn. Entropy or syntropy represents creation or advancement. It is that which is always making new things and pushing the envelope forward, moving things to new and higher forms. It generates more complexity and more diversity. That's what the force of evolution does, or syntropy, the ordering force. More complexity, more diversity. It advances truth and wisdom in any given society, anywhere in the universe. If we are aligning ourselves to the syntropic force, or the force of evolution, we are aligning ourselves to truth, to natural law, to wisdom. It is the force which moves consciousness in the universe forward. More consciousness, more understanding, more awareness. It is the force which acts as for the advancement of good, advancing goodness and morality in any given society. So to align yourselves with evolution, with the syntropic force, is to create and align yourself with goodness, with natural law, with morality. Evolution is the force which moves freedom forward to greater, ever greater expressions, higher levels of freedom, to be able to do more and experience more. It is the force which advances survival and life itself. It is ultimately the force of order, the ordering force within creation that counteracts and fights against the force that is breaking everything down into its constituent elements and degenerating things and forcing them into chaos and forcing them backwards into less evolved forms. That's involution or entropy. Scientifically, it is called entropy. But occultically, it is called involution. This is the force that propagates degeneration, decay, stagnation, not moving forward, staying where you're at, or moving backwards. It is less complexity, more simplicity, less diversity, more uniformity, more undifferentiation, whereas evolution differentiates and creates diversity in new forms. Involution or entropy breaks things down into further and further levels of simplicity, uniformity, and undifferentiation. Involution stagnates understanding. In addition to just matter and energy, it stagnates the mind, the psychology. It creates ignorance. It forces us toward ignorance and allows us to take into our minds deception and untruth. It's the force which won't allow us to look at truth. It's the egoic force which won't allow us to admit that we are wrong and learn from our mistakes. That's what pushes everything in consciousness backwards. and creates unconsciousness. So it counteracts the movement of consciousness and creates unconsciousness. It puts consciousness into a ball, pushes it down, doesn't allow it to unfurl and expand and flower. It crushes consciousness. It advances evil, immorality. It stagnates our ability to understand natural law at work in the world. It wants to, the force of involution wants moral decay. It wants moral stagnation. It wants moral relativism, because that's what brings more immoral actions into the world and ultimately creates the state that we call evil. And ultimately, involution and entropy is the force driven by fear, which ultimately results in human slavery, which is where we're at. This is the force we have succumbed to as a species by not exerting our will, by not exerting true care for truth and for rights, and not exerting right behavior, right thought leading to right understanding, and then put forward into the world as right action. We're not exercising the willpower and courage to do that. That's why the force of involution and entropy has taken over, because it is the force which has put us into slavery through our fear, our ignorance, and our lack of right action. And ultimately, involution or entropy results in death and ultimately extinction, which is where humanity is going to head if we don't turn things around. This is ultimately the force of chaos. The thing which chaotically breaks down consciousness, the movement forward of all forms of life, and holds it back from progressing, which is what the actual plan of creation really is to move forward in consciousness, forward in higher levels of expression of complexity, diversity, move forward in truth and an understanding and wisdom and consciousness, higher levels of freedom and advancement of life itself. And this chaotic involutionary force that we have succumbed to, practically succumbed to, it wants death, it wants chaos, it wants slavery. So you could look at it you could look at this as, on the left-hand side here we have love, on the right-hand side we have fear. Evolution, involution. But what you can really look at it as, how I like to look at it as, the force of entropy or syntropy is, the force of evolution or syntropy, I should say, is natural law. And the force of involution or entropy is Satanism. See, if we're really getting down to the core of this all, the force which ultimately evolves us and moves everything forward in the human domain and in really every other domain of life and consciousness is natural law, is our alignment with natural law. So I put the natural law card here of the tarot, of the major arcana of the tarot, to represent this force. In actuality, the card that would represent evolution would be the Hanged Man card, because that is the servant of natural law. So I'm saying natural law here is really the ultimate expression of evolution. Okay, if we align ourselves to it. Alignment to it is the Hanged Man card of the major arcana. Okay, so that's actually card number 10 on the deck is the Hanged Man. Card number 11, of course, is Justice, natural law. The servant of natural law who willingly accepts his role as the one who is the herald to teach it and bring it fully forward into the domain of human consciousness is the Hanged Man on the tarot deck. Okay? So, I'm sorry, it's not card 10. My mistake, I apologize. It is card 12. Okay? And I always remember that it's card 12 because it is one of my birth cards. My two cards in the major arcana of the tarot deck personally, you use your birth month and your birth day. It's a little aside here to this. relating to tarot, which I think people will find interesting who want to look at the tarot from an esoteric occult point of view. To know which two cards of the major arcana are, you take your birth month and your birthday. Now, if they are, let's say if it's a day like 30, then you reduce. 3 plus 0 would be 3, so your birthday card would be 3, okay? You take the month, which would be either 1 through 12, and then you would take your day card, which would be 1 through 31, okay? And if it's anywhere from... since there are only 22 cards, I'm sorry, in the tarot deck, 1 is a 0, which would not apply because that's the soul card or the fool card. You would go up through 21. So dates of the month 22 through 31 would have to be reduced. So, for example, 22 would be reduced to 4, 23 would be reduced to 5, and so on. So if I take my birth month, which is August, that's 8. That's the strength card or the courage card of the deck. The woman holding the lion's jaws open. Okay, that's my month, my birth month card. That is one of my tarot cards. And then the second one, which you associate with your birth, is the day card. My day is 12. I'm August 12th. I'm born August 12th, so 8 and 12. 12 is the Hanged Man card, and that represents the servant of natural law. How appropriate. And how appropriate that my month card is the strength or courage card, the force which has to be directly aligned with your will center to be able to do that work. So the tarot can teach you so much about yourself that it's not even funny. It's almost scary how accurate it is when you really understand how to esoterically interpret it. So the Hangman card is the force of evolution, is the servant of evolution, or it could be seen as the evolution card itself. But I am talking about here in the very big overarching terms here, okay? Evolution is natural law itself. The force of evolution is natural law itself. And then Satanism is the involutionary force, the adversary, the opposer to natural law. Shaitan, Satan. Okay? So that's the force of chaos and entropy at work in the world that gets us to go against natural law or remain ignorant of it. Now, the card that would be exactly opposite at the same level of the macrocosmic tree of life, if we lay out the major arcana according to the two trees, the microcosmic tree and the macrocosmic tree of the Kabbalah, and we lay out the cards from 0 through 22 on those two trees, the first 11 on the microcosmic tree, starting with the 0 card at the Da'at position, and then progressing forward, cards 1 through 10 on the Sephirot, on the tree of life. That gives us the first 11 cards of the major arcana on the microcosmic tree of life, representing the forces at work in the individual consciousness. And then we take the second half of the major arcana, cards 11 through 21, and we lay those out 11 through 20 on the Sephirot of the tree of life, the macrocosmic tree of life, then putting the world card, card number 21, or the 22nd card of the major arcana at the Da'at position, representing the universe, the forces at work in the universe. We end up with Justice, card number 11, at the highest position on the macrocosmic tree of life. I've gone through this in my presentation called Demystifying the Occult, part 1. Okay? It's at the end of that where I do this tarot card breakdown. I've also done it in the audio podcast version of What on Earth is Happening. You can get that in the podcast section of whatonearthishappening.com. So if you lay the cards out like that, you will see Justice, the natural law card, is the highest force of creation, seated at the Keter position of the macrocosmic tree of life. The two cards directly underneath the Justice card on the macrocosmic tree of life at the Chokmah and Binah Sephirot, respectively, would be the hangman and the death card. Okay? So that the death card on the tarot deck, the major arcana of the tarot, would be representative of the force of involution, whereas the hangman card represents the force of evolution, which is the servant of natural law, the moral laws that govern all of the universe. So what I'm putting into perspective here is if we understand that these are the only two occult forces that are really operating in all of nature, love and fear, evolution, which pushes us forward, or syntropy, versus involution, which pushes us backwards, or entropy, we are really talking about whether we are in alignment with natural law or whether we are in opposition with natural law, the true moral laws of creation. So to be in alignment with natural law is to align ourselves with the force of evolution, and to be in opposition with natural law is to align ourselves with Satanism, the force which actually acts as the adversary or the opposer of natural law and evolution, the involutionary or entropic force in nature. So moving forward in this presentation on societal Satanism and how it works in our culture. And I think this is going to be very powerfully important to break this down, because people think that Satanism is just this crazy religion with men in black robes and teenagers going out and sacrificing animals in the woods in a big bonfire and wearing these crazy medallions and inverted crosses and listening to black metal and wearing leather, and this is a false variation of Satanism, and people don't understand how Satanism works in the world and what it's trying to do. That these people want to become God, become a master race, rule everybody else as God on earth, make everybody else their slaves through mind control, through getting people to believe that which is false, like moral relativism, and then act upon it so that they create chaos in their lives and in the world. That's what Satanism is, folks. It's not worshiping anything. It's fucking this world up irreparably because of wrong thinking, not caring about the right things, and wrong behavior. And what Satanists ultimately want is to align people's minds, hearts, and behaviors with all the wrong things, to invert everything. I want to explain to people how there are sects of Satanism that work in different ways but ultimately achieve the same goal or the same end result. And you have to liken this to sects of other religions to understand it. And again, I'm telling you, 99.99% of human beings on earth do not understand this. They think they do, and they have no fucking idea what they're talking about. And they talk out their ass because they have no experiential knowledge of it, nor do they have any even secondhand knowledge told to them from somebody who's been involved, nor do they even have accurate book knowledge of it. They're deficient in all three methods of knowledge: firsthand, experiential; secondhand, from someone who had direct experiential; and book knowledge from someone who wrote about it through any of the other forms of knowledge. So there's no gnosis, nor is there any actual learning through book knowledge regarding these dynamics. I'm trying to write that and encourage people to do more investigation and research on their own regarding these dynamics. Don't just take my word for it. So to understand the sects or branches of modern Satanism, okay, this is how modern Satanism works in the world, its goals, and how it operates in the world. It helps to compare the sects of modern Satanism to the types of denominations that are found in other religious institutions, such as modern Christianity. The many Christian denominations differ widely in their various beliefs and practices. Their culture, their, churches, their symbols, their rituals, etc., their prayers, their hymns, all of that can differ very widely, even the ways that they, their belief systems. Some could believe in good works, some can believe in salvationism, etc. But ultimately, all forms of Christianity are ultimately unified in their belief in Jesus as the Savior of humanity. That's the one overarching belief that makes Christianity Christian. They generally follow the biblical allegory of Jesus and him as a historical figure. They believe in his historicity, and they attempt to align their ideology and worldview and behavior to the teachings of Jesus found in the New Testament. That's the general overarching ideological principles of Christianity in any given form, in any denomination. And they believe in general Jesus as the Savior of humanity and believe in his divinity. Okay? So the early church was sort of unified. It was a unified religion. Okay? And then it split into the Western Church of Rome and the Eastern Church of Constantinople. Okay? So in the modern world, the Eastern Church became the Eastern Orthodox Church and then its many different denominations. And then the Western Church of Rome split into Roman Catholicism and Protestantism and into their different denominations. Roman Catholicism really doesn't have many denominations. It has remained largely the same since the initial East-West split of the early church. But Protestantism has probably split into the most denominations. So they all have different ways of getting there, but ultimately the goal is the same: salvation through Jesus. Okay? That's their one overarching goal of all the forms of Christianity in all the denominations in which it is practiced in the modern world. Similarly, the quote-unquote sects of modern Satanism, which are not what they think. It's not what you think it's going to be, folks, most people. Okay? I'm not going to get into talking about the Church of Satan versus the Temple of Set versus the Satanic Temple versus the Order of the Evil Eye versus the Church of Lucifer, etc., so on, into all the different, variations of modern satanic ideology and groups we can get into, because we could go on for months. That's not what I'm going to talk about as being the main overarching sects of Satanism. We are talking about what its real goals are in society and how it most efficiently and effectively goes about the achievement of those goals, of that one goal, really. We're talking about not really, truly multiple goals, but one overarching goal. Okay? So the many different the different sects of modern Satanism will differ as to their specific ideologies and the methods by which they will achieve their ends and their rituals, etc., their books, okay? But they all share one overarching goal: to institute global human slavery and in so doing permanently destroy human freedom and true human spirituality. And I'm not talking about groups that are self-styled Satanists that are saying they want human freedom, okay? So I'm not even talking about groups like the Satanic Temple. Now, again, the Satanic Temple's Baphomet statue was in the title card for this presentation. Please do not think I'm talking about any one particular group like that, okay? I'm not referring to that. That was just used as a symbol to represent the adversarial force in nature, which is the involutionary force, which comes through the satanic ideology in all the many forms it is practiced as the Christian devil, Baphomet, etc. It's just a symbol, folks. I'm not referring to any given specific group. So please understand that. Okay? Because then the first thing I'll hear is, oh, you're just, trying to talk shit on the Church of Satan or the Temple of Set or the Satanic Temple. I personally could care less about those groups. Those are like when I talk about tiny little way down here on the hierarchy, barely involved in the hierarchy, where they're just, especially groups like the Satanic Temple, which are highly self-styled and don't really align with the higher level ideologies of the tenets that I talked about. They have their own, little agendas that they want to put forward politically, etc. But we're talking about extraordinarily low level on the totem pole of worldwide societal old religion. Okay? I'm talking about something that goes way beyond what any of these groups are even talking about. Okay? The satanic ideology in itself and the worldwide network that I am talking about of its adherents of hoarding knowledge, taking it into their inner circle, hiding it from the rest of people. They don't care about these little groups and the little people that are their rank and file minions that are propagating whatever ideology they're propagating to whoever will listen. That's not, they're nothing to them. Nothing to them. Okay? And in many cases, they just let these groups operate autonomously and there's not really much involvement. I'm talking about when you really get into real world old religion Satanism. Okay? That ultimately goes up to the highest levels of political power, banking power, religious power, child trafficking, pedophilia, running the corporations of the world, running the pharmaceutical cartels, running the drug cartels, totally controlling and running organized crime everywhere throughout the world. Whether it be drug cartels running out of South America and Mexico, whether it be drug cartels running out of the Eastern European nations, whether it be, African gold and diamonds, procuring and smuggling. You can go on and on and on into all the things they have their hands in through organized crime. They control every organized crime syndicate on the face of the earth, and all organized crime heads report to the dark occult. You can be assured of that. It all connects into the intelligence societies. They're all organizing the whole surveillance state. They connect in with all political and financial institutions and think tanks. The high-ranking members are really running the think tanks. The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, the Royal Institute for International Affairs, Chatham House, Wellington House out of England, the Council for National Policy, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission operating out of the United States, the Bilderberg Group, a worldwide group that ultimately connects in with Satanism and takes their god's name, Baal or Bill, in Bilderberg, because Satan was always depicted as a bull god, depicted as a bull in the Sumerian, Akkadian, Canaanite traditions as Baal, the sun god. So, I went into that, the whole kind of phonetic variation of BL, Babylon, Bible, it goes on and on and on. Bail, making bail in jail, bailiffs, bills, the type of dollar that we use are called bills. We pay bills with bills, the dollar bill. You could just go on and on and on with how many variants. The Liberty Bell, all named after this god, this solar deity, Baal. It's Satan in the ancient world. That's all it is. It's the variant of that name, Satan. But this is the god in the ancient world in the Canaanite, Akkadian, Sumerian tradition. That's where it stems out of. And it had other names. Bill was one of them, obviously. Different various phonetic pronunciation of the vowels of the consonants B and L with interchangeable, vowels in between. I did that at the end as a little wordplay pun game, fun thing at the end of Demystifying the Occult Part 2. But, that's what you have to understand. We're talking about this involutionary force, this adversarial force. And they will have sects set up to take the population into the mindset of Satanism to achieve the end goal. The end goal is slavery of the actual high-level old religion. Not these little groups that are self-stylized Satanism. Again, the big cult, they're not really caring about them that much. They're not, that's not their, they use them as, some of them are used as psychological vetting and filtration organizations to take people with the certain characteristics and skill sets that they want up through the ranks into the higher levels of the dark occult. That's all those institutions, that's all those smaller level organizations are there for. Putting the feelers out and identifying traits and characteristics in the general public that they want to exploit. So, I'm going to build in the next slide, let's start to move forward, how the modern satanic cults, the modern satanic sects actually operate in our modern society. And this is one of the biggest parts of how our entire modern society is one big satanic ritual, getting everybody to participate in achieving this cult's end goal, the end goal of the old religion. So we're going to represent the religion itself with the Baphomet symbol, which is also the background. Okay, so this is our unified religious cult. You have to look at this as this is the unified early church from the last slide, the last example on the last slide, that is now going to fracture into two main bodies or organizations worldwide. That what this is ultimately going to do is help people to usher in the end goal, not really realizing that that's what they're doing, and do it through dialectical means that achieves a secondary purpose of creating adversarial, dialectical, adverse energy. Okay? Or in other words, polarization between two seemingly competing groups. But these two pillars, these two groups that are seemingly competing and pitting themselves against each other are ultimately all filtering down to the same end goal that is in the future, set in the future to be the end goal all along. It's the ultimate dialectical polarity, the polarization dialectic, as I have called it. So let's start building out this chart and explaining how they do it. The two sects, and I'm going to get red, white, and blue on you, folks. Okay, that's what we're going to do here. It's 7/7, only 3 days after so-called Independence Day here in this country, commemorating our alleged split from England, okay, from the British Empire. You know, nothing could be further from the truth. We may have achieved that very briefly, but they did not really ultimately back down ideologically and culturally. And we're still ruled. The sun has never really set on the British Empire. America is still ruled from the shadows from there and from the royalty of Europe, and ultimately the dark occult that operates out of the religious institutions from the church, the Vatican, Jerusalem, Mecca, etc. All of the ostensible religious traditions. So the two ultimate sects of modern Satanism is the political wings of whatever political parties we're talking about in any nation. Because you have to have two, folks. That's what sets up the royal arch, which creates the most polarizing strength and holds up the most weight. Because you have to have it based upon parental figures. Again, this is the other thing people don't understand. Why are there only ever two political parties? Why is there that liberal and that conservative, that left wing and that right wing? They're all connected to the same body. It's all ultimately one body politic. It's all ultimately one organization that is ultimately vying for ultimate power and control over the human population and to bring us into abject slavery. They just put on two different masks. That's all it ever is and ever has been. And the people are still fooled. They're still in political polarization. They're still all getting all ratcheted up for the big fucking circus coming in 2020. When it never has mattered and never will matter because Satanists run the whole fucking goddamn show, boys and girls. They run the whole fucking show. There ain't no difference between any of them. The master of all government and all political parties is the adversarial force in nature. Whatever you want to refer to that as. It's the thing that's holding us back and keeping us enslaved. And it doesn't matter how long it's been going on for. It's always been wrong. It's always been morally wrong. And that's why it needs to end. That's why slavery needs to be stopped and ended. And the only way to really ultimately do that is to help people to understand how this dynamic works and how it controls the mind, to get people to do its bidding and do its dirty work for it, and ultimately usher in themselves against their own interest, the very slavery that it wants to usher in. But people are too damn stupid and childish and naive to want to give up their political identification. I'm on this team. These are my gang colors. These are my cult colors. I'm in the elephant cult. I'm in the jackass cult. Are you in the smacked ass elephant cult, or are you in the smacked ass donkey cult? Because whichever one you're in, you're a smacked ass. Dumb as a bag of fucking broken glass. So Satanism fractures itself deliberately to create polarization in the ranks of humanity. And it does it very effectively. It's genius. So what are the methodologies of these different branches or sects of Satanism? See, folks, you got to understand, you can't just tell people, you know what? We're Satanists. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to give you our ideologies, and then you're going to help us enslave yourselves. Can you imagine if this is what the rulers of the world did? Everybody'd go, fuck you. We're not doing that. We're not that stupid. Well, I don't know. Maybe humanity is that stupid. You know? Sometimes I just think, yeah, we're just that stupid. People are just that stupid. The bulk of humanity. You know, I'm not that stupid. I was only that stupid till I learned how it really worked, which is why the universe let me see behind the curtain for a while. That's all. It said, hey, you have all these aspirations and you have a lot of these wrong ideas because you haven't delved enough into true spirituality. Guess what? Let's jumpstart your understanding. Let's put you in with the real, true demons behind the scenes for a little bit. Until you get shaken out of your dumb dunce slumber, you smacked ass. That's what the universe said to me. And boy, did it smack me across the face with a hammer. Okay? I've told the story many times to a point where, I was so, what I saw at the low level that I was involved in, how evil and how bad it was at the level it went to. And I know it goes 1,000 times beyond that. I was so depressed by what I became involved with that I was just sitting in my bedroom, literally doing nothing for the better part of a year except going to the bathroom to piss and shit and to eat food to the minimal extent that I did, and not even basically leaving my bedroom and doing nothing but sulking and writhing in my depression and playing doom metal all day long. For the better part of a year. That's what the experience the universe had to give to me to slap me out of my stupor. So I could imagine what it must do to people who don't have 147 IQ. You know? I could only imagine how ensconced and ensnared in their own ego they are, and what a hard case they are compared to my soft case of the ego. So let's look at their methods. Their main methods are appeal to authority, of course, because they want to set themselves up as the gods of society. But they do it through different appeals to authority. See, they can't just tell people, we're going to rule everybody, you're going to help us get it done. Because people wouldn't comply or cooperate with that. They have some semblance of, wanting something good for themselves and for society. So they know people are basically split into two camps. They have people who have motherly abandonment issues, that's the left, who want the authority in the form that they see it to be mommy and to provide. So what they're appealing to there is their sense of misplaced compassion for others. And they want everybody taken care of. That's what they're appealing to. They're appealing to this right-brained imbalanced notion of we have to care for everyone, no matter what it means See, we have to secure the common good needs, right? It's appeal to authority through misplaced compassion and misplaced appeal to security for the common need. Okay? So you're focusing here on this method in getting into the minds of people. What they're doing, they're exploiting the people who are in this form of brain imbalance and in this form of parental abandonment. Those people themselves are focusing too much on the common good at the expense of individual rights. And you'll always hear them talk about that the common good has to supersede individual rights because they're all concerned about government and authority being mommy or daddy. Being mommy that's going to nurture and care for everybody and provide all the resources for everybody, like mother's milk. And that's, in their mind, they're too right-brained and balanced. They don't have brain balance between the left and right brain hemisphere. They're imbalanced toward the belief that the individual doesn't matter and that the common good has to supersede everything. And this is what's exploited and preyed upon by the Satanist. The appeal to authority through that misplaced compassion for all of society. And again, these are the hallmarks of right brain dominance. The right brain is too imbalanced negatively. It's too imbalanced dominantly, I should say. And they don't have enough left brain understanding. So I'm seeing that it is 5 o'clock. We're nowhere near the end of the presentation, folks. So more likely than not, instead of rushing for calls, I'm going to unpack this. And it'll take as long as it takes. And we'll do a whole call-in show next week probably, because I feel this is extraordinarily important material for people to deeply comprehend and share with other people. So I want to make the presentation as strong as possible. So if I somehow do wrap it up and we take some calls, great. But more likely than not, let's do a whole call-in show next week on this. And I like doing those. Okay? The method of the right-wing sect of Satanism or right-wing politics is appeal to authority through selfishness and security of individual desires. See? So you're preying on people's compassion, their selflessness on the left-wing faction. But the right-wing faction or sect realizes there are other people in society that are more selfish and care more about themselves than providing for the common good. And so you're going to prey on that dynamic. You're going to say, well, these people have selfish individual desires. Let's prey on that dynamic. So these are people who focus too much on selfish concerns at the expense of the true common good, which there is such a thing as. That's the law of freedom. Aggregate freedom comes about through aggregate morality. That's the common good. Doing good in the common sense term of understanding conscience by understanding the actual objective difference between right and wrong behavior. Okay? So in this case, you're seeing that there are certain people who are more selfish than they are concerned for the well-being of others. So you want to prey on that with the right-wing politics because you're preying on their individual desire to generate prosperity for themselves. Okay? And become either rich or prosperous, have their own rights protected. Okay? But not worry so much about all of what's going on in all of society. The right-wing factions are always more self-absorbed and self-oriented. The left-wing factions very rarely ever care about individual rights because they're only ever concerned about society as a whole. There's no balance there for both individual rights and the good of society. That's the equilibrium point. Okay? This is what the mathematician John Nash talked about as a game theory solution, where the maximum amount of people who prosper and come out as winning is the people who focus simultaneously in a state of equilibrium on what is both good and right for themselves and good and morally right for all of society. And that's a very difficult balance point to strike because most people are imbalanced toward one brain hemisphere or another. And the occultists know this because they know more about the brain, the physiology, the psychology than almost all of the people put together. One of them knows more about that than almost all of humanity put together, let alone tens of thousands of them operating in concert on the same page. That's why they constitute a mastermind of evil, which the universe is going to grant their manifestations because they're all on the same page and we're all divided in the dialectic that they've set up for us. And people still can't see it and still won't abandon it because they're too attached to it egoically and can't admit they've been duped. The right-wing political sect is always hallmarks of left brain dominance or left brain imbalance. So these are the methodologies they operate through. Identify the people you're trying to enslave. Some are more selfish. Some are more concerned about just the good of society and don't care about the individual. It's brilliant. It's genius level methodology, strategy of conquering, of dividing and conquering. Genius level. And that's why the average imbecile, the average person, eating poison, drinking poison, watching poison, cannot cognize or conceive of the level of these people's genius and the level of their methodologies at work in the world. They can't even conceive of it. And again, I'm not tailoring this as a presentation or my show or all of my work. Folks, I'm not tailoring this for the average imbecile. I am tailoring this for the people who have enough holistic intelligence to take it in, understand what I'm saying, and then help teach it to other people who are even at a lower level of intellectual acumen than they are. So, I don't take the hermeticist, elitist idea that this information just isn't for everybody. It has to ultimately be for everybody. What I'm saying is my teaching method isn't for everybody. Not everyone will be able to receive it from Mark Passio. I am under no delusion that everyone can. That's why I'm not looking for everyone to follow me in my work. I am looking for a handful of tremendously good and intelligent, holistically intelligent people to become teachers and propagate this knowledge out much farther than I ever could as an individual. Because I realize people are not going to take this, every person is not going to take this information from me. It will have to be put in a myriad of different ways and methods and means to reach a much greater number of people than I will ever be able to reach as an individual. That doesn't mean that I think ultimately this information is only for a few. It is for all in an egalitarian sense. I think it is simplistic enough at some level that everyone can really understand how it works. It's just not everybody's going to be able to learn that from Mark Passio, admittedly. So let's look at then where this goes. It then derives social manifestations in different forms. When the left-wing sect of Satanism puts all of its methodologies of mind control into effect to get people on board with the left-wing agenda, the manifestations become false notions of equality, which isn't equality under natural law at all. It becomes sameness, homogeneity, lack of differentiation in society. Everybody having to think like they think and be on board with their agendas and be on board with their narratives. It becomes this notion of democracy, the rule of the people. The rule of whatever we say is the law. It's not the rule of natural law. It's the rule of man's law. That's what democracy is. And a small group, or a majority, I should say, can make it up. That's all democracy is. It's the opposite of an oligarchy. In a sense, an oligarchy or a few people make it up. In a democracy, the majority get to make it up, even if they're wrong. It's not based on any true objective standard of morality. It's based on whatever the majority thinks right and wrong is. And then they could just institute it and impose it on the masses, impose it on the minority, just because they held the vote. Well, if you held the vote, we can strip everybody's rights just because we erroneously think that that's a right for us to do. Well, we can do it in a democracy. That's one of the things it leads to. It's one of the places we're at right now. And then eventually you have creeping socialism, or what's known as Fabian socialism. My producer's pointing out a spelling error. I'm going to fix it right now. So corporatism. There we go. I was missing an O. Okay. Put a save on that. Thank you for that. Let me go back to my slide there. I'll build this out again real quick. Okay. So the social manifestations of the left-wing sect of Satanism, we have the false notions of equality, democracy, and we have what's called creeping socialism or Fabian socialism. This is getting to the place where the entire society's needs and resources, the resources of the society, services are entirely controlled by government. Okay, so it's the means of production and distribution are controlled by the state. That's what all socialism really is. But you get to it out of democracy, this idea that the people can decide. It passes through the stage called Fabian socialism or creeping socialism. In the modern leftist society in the United States, they are now calling that democratic socialism because it's the in-between phase between democracy and pure socialism, which is the control of resources by the state, ultimately. So then we finally have real socialism, real left-wing socialism, and then that eventually becomes either an oligarchical party controlling the entire government or a dictator controlling it all, and then you have communism, which is totalitarianism. It is the left-wing form of total control over a society in the handful of either a very few group of people or in the hands of one individual. It's a symbolic individual, of course. It's really controlled by the Satanists, who are the true members of the unified religious cult in the middle. That's who's really controlling it. And ultimately, as we're going to see, they're really controlled by the involutionary force itself, or Satan as a force, okay? So then if we look at the social manifestations of the right-wing sect, okay, we have this false notions of rights, where people think some people have rights that others don't based on their power and wealth in society. Or this idea that we can delegate rights to certain groups of people. Both groups, left and right sects, believe that. Then this degenerates into minarchy or limited government. You know, even like Republican form of government, the Republic. It's all minarchy and limited government. It's still the notion that slavery is legitimate. It's still the notion that some people have rights that others don't have, that we're not truly equals under natural law, that certain rights can be delegated or granted to people to do that other people don't have the right to do. That's what all government is. And then this will descend as a in-between step between another form of socialism called National Socialism. We have crony capitalism or corporatism. And this was the in-between step that led to Nazi Germany. We have that here. We have a mixture of Fabian socialism and crony capitalism or corporatism. It's not real capitalism. That's what we have going on. We have these two sects that are combining their efforts, their methods, their social manifestations, and ultimately bridging to the one overarching goal in U.S. society in particular. So in this in-between stage on the right-wing side, you have crony, quote-unquote, capitalism. It's not real capitalism at all, or corporatism. And that will eventually lead to a form of socialism called National Socialism, out-of-control nationalism combined with corporatism. And eventually that is the totalitarian form of government called fascism. That's what it will become long-term. But folks, it doesn't matter whether you call it the blue donkey or the red elephant. I don't care what you call it. They're both forms of Satanism that lead to one control. I don't care what sect of the cult you want to believe in. You could believe in the left-wing donkey cult, the right-wing political cult, but it's all stemming from the unified religious cult called Satanism. And they have one goal, folks, and that is human slavery. That's what the one goal is, you know? They want to give you the blue faction and the red faction and make you think, oh, your team is better, your brand of cola is better, your brand of cotton candy is better. You could have the blue or the pink brand of cotton candy. It's all fucking poison, you know? Have this form of high fructose water or this form of high fructose water. It's all poison. The cult doesn't care how they get there, folks. Do you realize that? You know, this is what people who still believe in politics don't get. The cult does not care how they get to abject human slavery. Doesn't matter to them. They couldn't care less. They could do it through the left-wing faction. They could do it through the right-wing faction. Sorry, I accidentally clicked back. I'll have to build the slide out again. So watch this. Let's go back to the slide. Yeah, they don't care whether they come at it through the left or right-wing faction. They would prefer to get there directly by telling you we're your rulers and we're taking you into slavery whether you like it or not. Most people wouldn't go for that direct method. That's why they have to do it through an occulted methodology and make people believe we're the ones in control. We're the government. We're the ones who are instituting all of these laws and rules. No, they're duping you into believing that you're that person when the cult is that group of people that are the masters behind the scenes. That's all. And people are just that brainwashed and that refusing to admit that they are duped and fooled. See, folks, I built this all out deliberately in red, white, and blue colors, you know, to celebrate our independence because we're so free, you know. Government isn't slavery. No, it's the rule of the people. That's what we have here. Yeah. You know? So here's all nice red, white, and blue colors on our slide here. Let's keep it there for a moment. You know, beautiful red, white, and blue colors to celebrate our independence here in the United States and throughout the rest of the world. We're so free. You know? There's no satanic cult ruling the earth. No. That's all hearsay. That's all conjecture. That's conspiracy theory. Or it isn't happening at all. Not a bit, because I don't want to believe that that's what the world is. So here, if it makes you feel any better, I know a lot of people can't handle it. They have a really thin skin when it comes to this. They don't want to hear that we're enslaved. They don't want to hear that the ultimate goal of all politics is the slavery of all humanity. Okay? Let's even go back to this full screen. If it makes you feel any better, okay? Here's what I'll do. Let's put the goal in nice red, white, and blue letters, just like this. Okay? Does that make everybody feel proud? Proud to be an American? It makes us feel so wonderful. Our slavery is red, white, and blue. The goal that the Satanists took us to, we'll wrap it up in nice, pretty colors. Let's wave a flag around. Let's be proud that we're part of this system. And it's just fine and dandy. It's hunky-dory. Nothing needs to change. We're free. We've always been free. We'll always be free. I mean, the only thing that's really missing in this picture is the big fucking clown with big fucking clown shoes and a big fucking red, white, and blue wig. I got to break him back out. That a Satanist from the Order of the Evil Eye sent to me when I asked him about, does the high-ranking members of the hierarchy that you're still in touch with, what do they think of the anarchist movement and the freedom movement at work in the world? You know, what do they think of the truth movement and trying to expose 9/11 and trying to, you know, explain to people that government is slavery and that, you know, we're really a slave society? And without a word to answer my email, he sent me back one JPEG image of a clown in a big polka dot, or, you know, I think it was a polka dots jumpsuit with big red floppy clown shoes and a big multicolored, like Ronald McDonald style wig with a party hat, honking a horn, like one of those boom, 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 you know, those horns, those clown horns, dun, 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 you know, makes that noise, honking one of those horns. Yeah, that's it. No words, nothing, just an attachment. No, you know, reply via text, email, nothing. Just an attachment of that JPEG. That was his answer. And again, I've said it in the past, and I'll say it again. Folks, I wish I could disagree with that Satanist's response, but I cannot. I cannot disagree. I have to concur that that is what's happening. That is exactly what should be thought by the higher level Satanists as to any little modicum of resistance that's ever been offered. Again, my take on it is it's a piss poor pittance. Yeah. Let's make that another, mainstay term here on what on earth is happening. Get as offended as you like as to what I said about American society and world society for that matter. It's a bunch of naive, fucking clowned out children that have no idea what's going on in the world behind the scenes of ostensible politics. Know nothing about real world Satanism. Know nothing about the master psychology that these dark occultists wield over them and the level of mind control that they have the public in. Know nothing about their methodologies. Know nothing about their end goals. And they think that they're not duped, and they think they know what's going on in society, and they're a bunch of fucking know-nothing, naive children. And ultimately, they're clowns. They're the real clowns. You could say that the masters of the world are clowns, all the political dupes that usher in their satanic agenda are clowns, all you want. It's great. Make fun of them too, because they're clowns too, because they're getting thrown under the bus. Okay? But let me tell you who the real clowns are. For a circus ticket to be bought, there have to be attendees of the circus. And those are the real fucking clowns. Okay? All the clowns could go to the circus tent and say, we're going to put on a big show, the greatest show on earth, and dupe everybody and lie to everybody and enslave them all. But if nobody shows up, there's no fucking circus. But you know what has happened? 99.99% of the human population has showed up to the fucking circus. And they believe the show is real. When it's all in their mind, it's all big mind control fucking puppet show to put them into one place. And that's what's listed right there at the bottom of that slide, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. That's the goal, human slavery. And that's where we're at. Because people are too stupid to see all of the things I've laid out here on this slide. The sects of Satanism, the methods of Satanism, the social manifestations of Satanism, and the goal of Satanism in our society. And it's all one big satanic ritual that they get people to go along with their own enslavement. Because, folks, it's all about satanic inversion, the inversion principle, the satanic inversion principle, as I call it. Satanists seek to invert everything that is good with everything that is evil. They want the upside down world, as I described in last week's show with the completely misplaced trust in societal institutions 3 weeks ago, I should say, the last show that I did. The quote from the philosopher that talked about everything is backwards, everything is upside down. All the institutions, what they ostensibly claim they are doing and they are put in place to do the exact opposite. Governments destroy freedom, health organizations destroy health, religious organizations destroy spirituality, and on it goes. The satanic principle as the adversarial opposer of the good, of the natural, of the moral, of natural law, the adversary to all of that, always wants to invert everything in our society, to turn everything upside down and tell you that it's the opposite. They want to tell you black is white right to your face and have you naive enough to believe it. They invert truth with falsehood. That's why people can't tell the difference between them. Everything's relative. There's no objective, absolute truth. No, it's all relative. That itself is a falsehood. They want to invert knowledge and belief, and have people believing things and believing that they're true, thinking that they know that they're true, instead of actually having true objective knowledge of the nature of things through scientific discovery methods that don't require belief. None of what I am saying here or what I know is a belief, folks. It was hard-won knowledge through truth discovery methodologies and extensive testing, vetting, comparing, contrasting, which are scientific methodologies of observation and testing, which too few people know how to do. They want to invert morality and immorality and tell you that which is morally right is morally wrong, and that which is morally wrong is morally right. And we can make it up, and we could change it at any given time we want. We could pull the switcheroo and switch them at our whim. That's called man's law. Don't you know? We'll decide what's right and what's wrong. And we'll make laws according to it. And if we say something that is truly good in nature is morally wrong, we'll lock you in a cage for doing it. And if we say you must partake in something that is actually an objective point of fact reality, objectively morally wrong, and you won't participate in it, we'll lock you in a cage for doing it, because we'll call that wrong. We'll call not partaking in it morally wrong, when it's the morally right thing to do. Everything's backwards. Everything's upside down. Everything's satanically inverted. They want to invert good and evil itself, because that's what they want you to believe, that Satanism is good. That following the adversarial force will lead you into a condition of good in society instead of a condition of evil and enslavement. Here's the thing that's been the main driving force of the bulk of my work, and has been a cornerstone of my work, that I still think hardly anybody really understands. In all honesty, from just feedback that I get and just trying to put my thumb on the pulse of what's going on in the alternative community, very, very few people understand one of the cruxes of my work, and that's the delineation and the distinguishing between the natural world and the world of artificial constructs, which I think has been one of the most pertinent and important aspects of the entirety of my work. And yet I think it is horribly misunderstood by the majority of people who even do look into my work, let alone people who don't. But they want to invert the natural and the artificial, folks. They want you adhering to the artificial world of constructs and thinking that the natural world is, a crock of shit and is unimportant to really understand what's objectively true in nature. That's why when you say natural law to people, they think they know what it means, and they are totally applying completely artificial constructs to it that only exist in the human mind and in the human constructural domain to something that has absolutely nothing to do with beliefs or human invented constructs, because people do not understand the delineation or the distinguishing between the natural world and the artificial constructural world. And they'll tell you that they do and insist that they know what it means. Well, again, I just had someone try to tell me natural law is how animals operate in nature. In public, on the street, in public space. Me, not knowing who I am, not knowing the work that I've done on natural law, knowing not even my name or anything the fuck about me, try to tell me natural law is this whole notion of Darwinian survival of the fittest and the way animals operate in nature, which I just did an entire fucking show on not too long ago called What Natural Law Is Not. Of course, never saw one tiny iota of any aspect of any part of my work, but yet will insist they know what natural law is and I don't, and that's what it is because that's what they believe. I mean, there's no colon long enough to get the head far enough up there. You know? It's like up there by 1 billion fucking light years. You know? That's how far up the ass somebody who thinks like that's head is. There will be no getting that out. I'm not under any delusion that it could be gotten out. I have no power to do that. I have no power whatsoever to change someone's wrong thinking to that extent. Basically, what you got to say to somebody like that is there's nothing you could possibly fucking learn from me. Don't say a word to me or expect a word back from me. They're hardened in their ego and they're controlled by the satanic force and are committed to remain so forever. That's called the lost. And what their owners call them in the dark occult is the dead. That's what they call them. That's what they'll continue to call them. And that's what they are. They're mentally dead, they're emotionally dead, and they're spiritually dead. And they don't care. That's why they're the dead. They don't really have any knowledge or apply thoughts correctly. They don't really have any care or true compassion. And they don't really certainly don't act rightly in the world. So their thoughts, their emotions, and their actions are missing and or dead. And so the Satanists of the world actually refer to them, to someone like that, who they own and control, as the dead. It's one of the reasons that they believe in their religious system of beliefs in Satanism that no karmic consequence will come to them ultimately long term, because they don't believe that they are performing any actions to conscious living beings. They believe that they are performing all of the actions that they are performing to inanimate matter that is ultimately, in the spiritual sense, non-animated. It may be physically animated, but it is what they refer to as a golem. Something that is dead, that is not actually imbued with spirit, that is just animated physical dead matter, like a robot. So some will refer to them as golems, and the big verbiage, the big word that they really refer to people who are completely inactive in their true intellectual capacity or caring capacity or active, doing the right action in the world. They're all completely inactive in all those capacities. The main thing that they call those people is the dead. And once again, folks, I wish I could disagree, but I cannot, because that is exactly what they are. They are not really truly alive. Physically being animated is not really life. It's not really truly life, because they're not active in any ways that a true conscious being that is spiritually activated is activated. And therefore, these people who do all of these heinous things to people like that say, we're not doing it to living beings. No karmic debt or consequences will come to us, because we are only doing that to the dead or the golems. And you know what, folks? I wish I could disagree with their assessment, but I cannot. I don't ascribe to that ideology. I don't think that that's right or moral. But can I really say that I disagree with their assessment of the condition of people? No. I cannot disagree. They are correct. That's what saddens my heart, to be honest. That's what it just makes me so profoundly sad that I get weak. Knowing that they're correct about the human condition, and when they told me that this was the human condition, and when they told me this is exactly where they had people, I resisted and insisted that they were wrong. And now, almost 20 years later, I have to say, I was wrong. The dark occultists were correct about where they have humanity. They did not lie to me. They told me the exact truth on the nature of the human condition. The exact truth. And you know what? In those almost 20 years, absolutely fucking nothing has changed. Absolutely fucking nothing has changed. Nothing. So let's go back to the satanic inversion principle that Satanists employ in our world, and look at some of the other methods that they use. They want to invert health and sickness and tell you all the things that will be good for your health are things that will make you sick. And all the things that will actually make you sick, you should do and take into your body. Inverting health and sickness. Of course they invert freedom and slavery. They want to tell you can get to freedom through politics and government, which is slavery. We're going to get to freedom through implementing slavery. Yeah, that don't you know? Don't you know? That's how it works. Yeah. I mean, again, people are just dumb as bags of dog shit. Really, they are. Implementing government slavery is going to lead to human freedom in the real physical world. Yeah, that's how it works. That's how we're going to get there. We'll get there slowly but surely, but we'll get there through government, which is slavery, to freedom. And smacked fucking ass clowns believe these satanic liars. Yeah. Inverting order with chaos itself. Again, they're inverting evolution and involution. You know, they're going to tell you that which is going to hold you back is going to move you forward, and that which will truly move you forward is what's going to hold you back. So don't subscribe to that. You don't want to look into natural law and understand what it really is. That would be suppression of moving forward. That would be chaos. But subscribe to satanic beliefs, ideologies, moral relativism, eugenics, etc., and that's going to move human society forward. Folks, the bottom line is the ultimate principle of inversion is the inversion of the very life and death itself, because that's what this order of death, this death cult is. It's a cult that venerates and ultimately worships death. And what is that card on the tarot? That's the force that is the involutionary force, Satan. The devil card is the slavery card, which is underneath the death card. And when is that ushered in? See, I got to do a whole breakdown of this on the tarot. I probably should have actually put it into the presentation, especially the macro cosmic tree. It's very appropriate to this discussion to integrate an understanding, an esoteric understanding of the major arcana of the tarot deck, occultically, with the knowledge that I'm laying out here regarding Satanism. Because if you look at on the macrocosmic tree, as the tarot, the second half of the major arcana gets laid out on the Sephiroth on the tree, okay? The left-hand path, or the path of severity, okay? Which is the dark pillar of Freemasonry. It would be the pillar of Boaz in Freemasonry, the equivalent in Kabbalah, okay? In the Freemasonic tradition. In Kabbalah, it is called the pillar of severity, or it is Geburah, severity. On this Kabbalistic path, the left-hand path, you have the moon, the devil, and death. Okay? And it leads to judgment at the Malkuth position, the bottom of the tree, which represents the lower chakra, the base chakra. Okay? But as you are offered truth, which is the sun card in this arrangement of cards, in this Kabbalistic arrangement of the tarot cards, if you reject it, you go to the left-hand path. That's the rejection of truth of the sun, which is the moon, which represents ignorance, okay? Going backwards in knowledge. Then what that will lead to societally on the left-hand path of this tarot card arrangement is the devil card, which is the slavery card. Because the ignorance of natural law invariably leads to the law of freedom applying, meaning you can't align your behaviors to objective morality, and therefore your society becomes enslaved. What is the ruling power over that dynamic is the death card, which is the involutionary force card. The force of involution, that which counteracts the force of evolution. Maybe as an adjunct to this presentation next week, I'll show you this card arrangement again, okay? And talk about these dynamics as it applies to the involutionary force, or the satanic force at work in all of our society. I may have to just extend the whole presentation into 2 weeks, folks, because I still have many slides left, okay? And we're nowhere near done. So, this is ultimately the inversion of life and death itself, and what Satanism wants is the worship and veneration of the death force itself, the involutionary force. That's why it's a death cult. That's why it is actually called at its highest levels the Order of Death. Look that one up. Look up the Order of the Black Sun, the old religion, and the Order of Death. They're the only things that their own adherents actually ever call it. They don't really ever refer to it any other name. And these are only names given to it to just be able to conversationally refer to it as. These are not formal names. Again, ultimately, the network of Satanism that is operating enthroned behind the scenes of power in the world is a cult without a name. So let's look at how our society really is a total satanic society. We're going to look at that it is a master-slave society. It is a death cult society. It is a prison society. It is a money-worshipping society. And it is ultimately a mini-me Satanism society. And all of this constitutes really what's really going on in our lives today is all of our culture is an endless one big satanic ritual taking place. Politics is the first part of it. Okay, we've already looked at the first part of the satanic ritual. That's contained in this slide itself, a master-slave society. We're all taking part in the entirety of the enslavement of society. That's all part of the ritual to enslave humanity. That's what government all is. People participating in their own enslavement as a ritual. It all has its rituals. You know, rituals out in front of the White House, signing rituals, signing bills into law rituals, you know, holiday rituals. It's all ritualistic dark magic. That's all it ever has been. But this is how a general master-slave society is structured, is oriented. Very simple dynamic, a very simple representative graph of a pyramidal structure where you have a small group of people that sit enthroned or enshrined at the top of the structure. The rest of the society is set up hierarchically, and often you will see this pyramid compartmentalized into different vertical strata, where one aspect of the society, such as banking, doesn't know what the other aspect, such as illegal drugs or medicine, is doing. They're not only stratified in layers of knowledge, levels of knowledge, but they're also compartmentalized into compartments of knowledge so that one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. And that's another way of more easily controlling people, not just through hierarchical strata, but through compartmentalized strata. So people think that this is the only form of hierarchy that exists in a master-slave society, that it's the masters at the top, and then underneath them you have them directly ruling over their slaves. As the slave class is the bulk of the population, and the masters basically run the society and tell the slaves what they can and cannot do. This is a pure oversimplification of the actual way that the structure of a master-slave relationship, or master-slave society, I should say, actually functions. It's more complicated than this. So my expanding of this is how a real master-slave society actually functions in deed, in behavior. You have middle managers or middle classes of masters that are also actually slaves to this set of masters over them, with obviously more and more of them as you go closer and closer to the slaves at the very bottom, which is the general population. And most people who study this dynamic of our society will admit, yes, this is how it works. You have the masters at the very top, the slaves at the very bottom, and you have middle management groups like governments and then banking institutions that and corporations that, you know, are structured in ways where they are both the masters over people and people underneath them, but they are also serving the masters at the very top level. But this leaves something out, folks. It leaves two very, very important dynamics out that most people who do research into the way that the occult works, the way that conspiratorial aspects of our society work, never take into consideration. And it's extremely important for both of these factors to be taken into consideration when looking at the stratification of the way our entire social dynamic structure works. And here's the first one. If you look at this bottom level, which represents the masses of people, the uneducated, unwashed masses of people who have no idea what's going on at the levels above them, okay? They are not only just slaves, but they are masters as well. And that's very odd for people to hear someone say. Very odd thing. Most people will never bring up this dynamic, okay? But the overwhelming, vast bulk majority of the average human being is not just a slave, but they are also masters over other slaves. So we act as police and masters over each other in many ways, with policing what we ourselves think and what other people can and can't think through political correctness and politically correct speech, which is just self-censorship. But most people never think of this. If you actually leave, this structure represents human society. If you leave this structure to the bottom, what are people ultimately acting as horrific, violent, torturing masters to? The entire animal kingdom. That's what we are acting as masters in this massive, satanic, never-ending satanic ritual over the animals that we barbarically treat and barbarically butcher endlessly, all day long, every single day. 10 billion land animals alone a year, conservative estimate. Probably many more than that. Over 100 billion, maybe 150 billion total animals slaughtered every year for human food needs alone. So-called food needs. Let me tell you something, folks. What inspired this entire presentation, as a brief aside to this slide, and again, like I said, if we finish today, we finish. If not, we continue next week. But as a brief aside, what inspired this entire presentation is, in the lead up to Independence Day, I did a little bit of biking and walking around my neighborhood. Sometimes I do that for exercise. You know, I hit the gym, and sometimes I bike there. You know, sometimes I'll drive there, sometimes I'll walk there. But, you know, I like to bike to get out in the sun, get some exercise, or just walk out in the sun. I'm taking a walk one day, and you know, I go and deliver packages, and then sometimes I'll just take a walk through the neighborhood for, you know, a mile or two, just for some good exercise. And I'm walking through the neighborhood, and I'm just over and over just smelling animal carcasses all over the place. Outdoor cookouts in people's homes. And I'm just thinking, it's like this is nonstop. This is only one small, tiny neighborhood in South Philadelphia. Imagine this, you know, citywide. Then imagine it statewide, then countrywide, then continent-wide, then worldwide. It's going on non-stop every second of every day. It's a 100% complete torture, murder, and death ritual with the animal kingdom, non-stop. And that's this level of the pyramid, that the main slaves, the human slaves, that are the basic bottom level of the pyramid, controlled by all the other masters above them, are masters themselves. Because in Satan's kingdom, in the kingdom that is ruled by Satanism, by the involutionary force, again, I don't look at it as a deity, as an actual entity. That's not how these Satanists look at it either. It's a nature force that is operating in the universe itself and is pushing the dynamics of society ass backwards and counteracting natural law and the true evolution of consciousness. It's counteracting that force. That's why it's the adversary or the opposer or the involutionary or entropic force. Okay? It wants every level of human society to be both masters and slaves, so that they are always a master over a level below them, but yet slaves to a level above them. And that's exactly what our society has become. Because not only do the slaves at the bottom level also act as torturous, barbaric masters over the animal kingdom below them, which is the slave level below them, but the so-called highest level masters of the dark occult organizations at the very top of this stratified pyramidal structure that we're using as a model here to represent the master-slave human society, they are not just masters, but they themselves are slaves to a level above them. And then we can go off into conjecture about what that level is. And folks, I'll tell you what I've told people what I think that level is and have made no bones about it. And I don't give a rat fuck what people think about what I think through my research, through my endless amounts of painstaking, laborious research into ancient documentation about what is actually ruling humanity at a higher level. And who gives the directives to the so-called occult rulers or masters that operate as rulers over all of our human society. It goes off into a non-human domain. And that is a physical non-human domain of a type 2 civilization. And then from there, they're even enslaved. And they're enslaved by non-corporeal, hyper-dimensional entities, who are then even themselves enslaved by the involutionary force itself. It goes on and on and on. As above, so below. But you know what, folks? It is not the natural order of things. If you believe that, you have subscribed to Satanism. That's the real takeaway of this. If you believe that it must be like that, you have subscribed to the ideology that your masters have given you at the mini-me level of Satanism. And that's what so many people will say. Oh, that's just nature. That's just how nature works. It's always been that way and it'll always be that way. Wrong! You're wrong! You have it exactly wrong. And you have subscribed to a satanic ideology. Incorrect, boys and girls. Untrue. Untrue. It is that way in human society through free will choice. Get the fuck over it. No, people want to believe it must be that way through the natural world because they're too weak-willed to change it. And they're too apathetic to change it. And they're too ignorant to change it. Don't tell me that's the way God made it. You're full of fucking shit. You want to believe in the God these people believe in? Go right ahead and say that force made it this way. But don't tell me the force of creation put that slavery into effect and keeps it there permanently, because you are a satanic believing, full of shit for brains punk bitch if that's what you think. And I'll be the one to tell you that just like that, because no one else has the balls to. Boys and girls. It'll leave my lips because it won't leave anybody else's, because they don't have the balls to do it. And they're not righteously angry about it enough that that's a free will choice and can be changed whenever we will it to change. But we don't want to do that work. No, we want to run away from that work. We want to run away from that great work. Because we want to say, it's just that way and it'll always be that way and I don't give a fuck and I don't care. Well, that's why it stays that way. That's why the death cult rules all of us. We're a society ruled by death. pumping death into the air, into the water, into the food, into the medicine, everywhere. Let's look at the dynamics of the death cult society. That's the master-slave society that people want to think it has to be that way. What do you think? The death cult society has to be that way? We need to poison our air. We have to spray all the chemicals we're spraying into our air. And jackasses still won't look up stratosphere aerosolic injection, and insist that this isn't a technological plan, an agenda that's taking place. No, these are persistent water vapor trails. Where's my vomiting guy? I got to go get him. Let me go get him. Hold on. Let me see if I have him here. Do I have him? Let's see if I have him. Hold on. Yeah, I'll just, that here we go. I got him. Let me just make him as full screen as I can. Yeah, you can go back. Here you go. That's as big as I'm going to make him for now. Yeah, there they are. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's just there's no such thing as chemtrails. Yeah, it's persistent water vapor trails. Wikipedia told me it was just a conspiracy theory. You can spray. Yeah, just condensation trails. Yeah, they form at like 8,000, 9,000 feet, and then another plane could come at the same altitude. And there's nothing behind it, and then up at like 25,000 feet, a contrail can form, and it's like just dissipating right behind it, and that's a contrail. But then contrails can form at 8,000 feet when there's no scientific evidence to support the claim that ice crystals are going to crystallize and form vapor trails at that altitude. But yeah, they're just persistent contrails. Yeah, that's all. Okay, that's it. I mean, this is what jackasses these people sound like when there have been completely declassified documents on geoengineering and stratosphere aerosolic injection. For years and years, they've openly admitted the programs. But yet people will say, no, this isn't part of a satanic agenda. This isn't part of polluting the air and completely alkalizing through the chemicals that are actually proven to be in these trails that are sprayed from planes are alkaline earth metals, which are soft, toxic to human being earth metals in the alkaline earth metal family of the periodic table, which when they hit soil will alkalize it so that the uptake of the nutrients that come through the root system of plants in food will not make the food nutrient dense, so that no matter how much you eat, even if it's organically grown, it will not have the nutrient content. It's a slow eugenics agenda of not having people be as vital and healthy as they otherwise could be if we're growing our food in clean, acidic soil as we should. The pH of soil for good organic food should be on the acidic side of the pH scale. The alkaline earth metals completely alkalize soil and rob food of nutrient density. And then you have other agendas where they could actually make the air into an electrified plasma so that they can send different types of signals through it, which can affect human physiology and brainwave patterns. We're running low on time. I'm just going to continue with the slides for the death cult until time runs out, and then we'll pick this up next week. I have more slides to go through. Fluoride in the water. So we're poisoning our air, our water, our food, so-called medicine, okay? And other aspects of our society reflect the death cult, which I'll get into. From truthaboutcancer.com. Before fluoride was added to the water supply, it was actually marked as a rat poison. Yes, stannous fluoride and sodium fluoride are rat poisons, the main ingredients of rat poison. It's actually a byproduct of the aluminum manufacture industry. This is the toxin, mass medicated to the majority of the United States population with no verifiable benefits and without our consent, and with no ability to control the dose, by the way. The only chemical that is given to people and children in a completely uncontrolled dose through drinking water. But it's perfectly safe and it's for the health of your teeth and gums, don't you know? I mean, this is how naive and dumb bags of shit human beings have become. And they're still fight you to the death that it's good for you. Still fight you to the death. Where if you went and got the whole raw byproduct of aluminum manufacture in the form of sodium fluoride or stannous fluoride, and you started, and it's marked as a total toxic poison that they can't even dump in traditional ways. And that's all the time we have for this week, folks. Run out of time. The show is exactly 3 hours long for people that still don't get that one. We'll continue with the Satanic Death Cult Society next week. I have many more slides, and then we'll be taking your calls on this topic next week. You've been listening to What on Earth is Happening, and government is slavery. We'll see you right here next week.